Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be creating this fun ocean theme box card, and we're going to create the entire box with one piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. So you don't need any dies, you don't need multiple pieces of cardstock that we'll piece together. We're going to create it entirely from one piece, and then we're going to add a bunch of these smaller pieces on to decorate it. So I've already pre-cut a bunch of the smaller pieces that we're going to be using on the box card just to save a little bit of time, but I will have all of the pieces you're going to need as well as the sizing in the video description below. So don't worry too much about that. You can always refer to the description to be able to get all of the measurements. And I have some pattern paper there as well as some Summer Splash cardstock, and all of the white cardstock is Nina Solar White 80 pound. Now here's a quick example of what we're going to end up with when we're finished. This is the completed box. So we're going to create this with the large white piece of paper that we have on screen here. So I'm just going to go ahead and set all of the smaller pieces aside since we won't need those yet. And I'm going to grab this larger piece, and that's what we're going to start with. So this paper when I started was 8.5 by 11, which is a standard letter size piece of cardstock. And what I did is I trimmed on the long side 1/4 inch. So this piece is actually 8.25 inches by 11 inches. So it just has 1/4 inch taken off the long side. And now we have exactly what we need to create our box card. So I have my large scoring tool here, and I'm going to use this to create my 4 score lines. Now I have little dots indicating on mine exactly where the score lines are just because I make these often, and this was an easy way to be able to do it. But to create your 4 score lines, you're just going to want to do them at 2 5/8, 5 1/4, 7 7/8, and 10 1/2. That's going to give you 4 score lines. That's going to create 4 panels that are completely the same size, and then one smaller, thinner panel right at the very end. Now once you're done with the scoring, you're going to turn this the long way and put it in your paper trimmer, and you're going to trim it at 4 1/4 inches. This piece here is going to be the actual box, and this leftover piece here is what we're going to use to create the shelves that are going to go inside of the box. So with this leftover piece, we're going to create the shelves for inside of our box card. So I'm going to cut this at 3 5/8 from the shortest scored edge. So I have that little short end there. I put it in my paper trimmer and I cut it at 3 5/8. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a scored edge on each end. And because this piece was 4 inches wide when we started, we're able to cut out 4 1-inch strips from this. So we have 4 pieces here that have the scoring line on each end. And these are going to be the shelves in our box card once we have it assembled. So I'm just going to set those aside and go back to the 4 1/4 inch panel that we cut originally. So this has all the original scoring lines, and it's 4 1/4 inches wide. And I'm going to score this all the way down the entire panel at 2 inches. So you can see there I have it right in my scoreboard. I have the little small piece at the very end, and I'm scoring this down at 2 inches. So now I have a score line all the way down the center, and I have 4 individual score lines running across, with that smallest one being at the very end. So now it's time to create the actual box. We have everything we need on screen to create the completed box. So the first thing we want to do is we want to trim down on the score lines. Now you want to make sure to do this on the shorter side. Now when we scored this down the entire center, we scored it at 2 inches. And that means that one side of the score line is 2 inches wide and one side is 2 1/4 inches wide. We want to trim down on the 2-inch side all the way down to the center score line. When you get to the smallest one, you're just going to flip it over and you're going to create a little notch there. And that's because that small little piece is what we're going to use to adhere the box closed. So now I have all 4 panels. They all have a cut line at the very top, and I can quickly and easily fold down the scoring lines and kind of hold it in place, and you can see how the box is going to form from this. So now we have all of the score lines and the cut lines completed, and we can attach our shelves to the inside of the card. Now this is an example that I kind of keep on hand, and it just shows me exactly what panel the shelves are going to be attached to first and what direction they need to be facing. So you can see here I have them on the second panel in on the largest panels, and I have them all kind of facing towards that end of the card. Now you can completely assemble the card and put your little shelves in. It's a little bit finicky, but you can kind of maneuver them inside the box and adhere them down. But this way that I'm doing is so much easier, and it perfectly aligns your shelves every single time. So to add these to the card, I'm putting the adhesive on the outside of this little shelf here. You can see I have it on the bottom of that little flap. And I'm going to line this up onto my panel. So I'm on the second panel in, and I'm on the edge that we don't have any of the cut lines. So I'm on what will be the bottom of the box. I'm going to line up all 4 of these shelves one by one onto this panel. and I'm kind of making sure to keep the top of the shelf lined up. So the top of the box card is going to be where the cut lines are. The other end is going to be the bottom. So if you kind of use that as a guide, that will help you to kind of make sure everything is lined up perfectly. And I'm just going to add all of these on until I have them completely attached. Now I have a little bit of space in between that first one, and that's what we want because that's actually going to be the first shelf in the box. So that's going to give us some room to add some of our fish and different elements to there. So now we need to fully attach these shelves to the other side of the card so that when we create the box, these go completely across the inside. So the easiest way I found to do this is to lay all of the little shelves completely flat down onto the card and just kind of use your fingers and line them up so that they're kind of going straight. You want to make sure that they're as straight as possible so that everything lines up nicely. And I've added adhesive to the end of each of these exactly how I did on the first end. So I'm going to fold over the box card in the center fold line, and I'm going to line up the bottom, and I'm going to press down really firmly onto those areas where we have the adhesive. And you can see now when I lift this back up, we end up with our box shape and we have the shelves perfectly aligned across the two panels. This is so quick and easy, and it lines it up perfectly every time. And I just love how quick and easy it is to assemble this. To complete the box shape, I just added some adhesive to that little score-lined edge that we created, and I attached it to the other end of the box. And now we have a completed box shape with our shelves inside. So now I'm just going to fold down the two flaps on the side as well as the front. And for the back of the box, we're going to leave that one standing straight up, so I'm not going to fold that one down. Now to assemble all the little pieces that we're going to add to the box card, I'm just going to use regular adhesive, and I'm going to adhere all of the little polka dot pieces to the blue pieces. And these are what we're going to use to decorate the side panels on the card. So I have two of the smaller polka dots, which we're going to use for the side flaps. And then I have three larger polka dots, which are going to be for the bottom area of the card. Now for the very front of the card, we're going to do some stamping. So I'm not going to use one of the polka dot pieces. I'm going to use that white cardstock piece instead. So we'll get to that in just a bit here. So now that I have the pattern paper attached, I'm just going to add these different panels to the bottom of the card. And for this here, I want to do the front and the two sides. We're not going to put anything on the back of the card because we're going to keep that blank to be able to write a message or add a hand stamp by stamp or anything like that. So that back piece on the card is going to stay completely white. Now I'm adding the two little side panels onto the little flaps here, and now I have all of my polka dot pattern paper pieces attached. Now you can change up the pattern papers you use. You can completely change it up for the design depending on what you're creating. This is an ocean theme, but the sky is the limit with these cards. You can create grassy scenes, outdoor scenes. You can create scenes with cats and dogs. Pretty much anything you can think of will work in this design. So now I'm going to create the panel for the back and all my waves. So for the very back panel, we have that really tall piece of white cardstock, and I've added some cloud detail to the very top. I'm not worried about the bottom because we're not going to see that once we tuck it down into the box card. For the waves, I'm using peacock feathers and mermaid lagoon distress inks, and I'm just adding these directly to these panels. And I have two of my waves facing one direction and two facing the other, so I'm making sure to use the different colors for each of those designs. And then I'm going to complete the inking with my sand, which is gathered twigs, and I'm putting this onto the panel that has the stitched edge. I'm adding a bit of water to these panels just to give them a distress look, so I'm flicking that on with my fingers, and then I'm just going to use the paper towel to soak up the extra water, and it's just going to give a fun distress look to each of these panels, and I love the result of that, especially on a water-themed card. So now that we have all the basic pieces ready to go, I'm going to start to get ready to decorate the box. So I have a bunch of ocean-themed characters here. I've stamped and die cut them off camera just to save a little bit of time. And we're going to mix and match all of these fun little guys on our card to create our scene. Now I love being able to use multiple stamp sets together to create a scene, so I had a lot of fun with this one. For the little panel that we're going to add to the front flap, I'm stamping the smallest crab from the Just Beclaws stamp set onto it with extreme black ink. And then I used a Copic multi-liner and just drew a line across the panel to create my sand. Now I'm going to quickly color this with Copic markers, and this is the exact same colors that I used to color the other crab that we're going to add to the card. I'm just using some basic red colors here. I like to use 3 different shades, and I'm just going to color this in really quickly and do a little bit of blending to give the crab a little bit of definition. Once I have him fully colored, I'm going to go ahead and color in the sand at the bottom of the scene. So I'm just using 3 shades of brown marker here, and I first colored the entire area and made it a little bit darker on the sides, and then I added a little bit of dot detail just to give it a more of a realistic look. I used my Peacock Feathers ink blending tool and added some color to the sky so it wasn't stark white. And then I'm using the Your Fantastic sentiment stamp from the Beach Bud stamp set, and I'm stamping that directly into the sand. And that's going to finish our little panel that we're going to add to the front. So now I'm going to assemble all of the pieces and create the entire card. So I have the largest panel at the back, and I've added the sand to this. And you can see that I put the sand in the center of the panel, and that's just because we're not going to see the bottom like I mentioned before once we assemble this. So I want it to be high enough up that we're going to be able to see it on the back of the card. And I'm also going to add this little palm tree. So I die cut it from some white cardstock and I just colored it in with my Copic markers. I adhered the palm tree to the panel with liquid glue, and now I'm going to attach the entire panel inside the box card on the very back piece. So this is the side that we didn't fold down since it will be the back of the box. Now if you do fold it down by accident, don't worry at all because this little piece that we're adding in is going to provide stability and it will keep it standing up straight up and down. I added the little crab there to the beach scene, and I tucked him underneath of the palm tree just to make it look like he was kind of chilling out underneath of that palm tree there. And now we're going to add our little waves to the shelves. Now the thing you want to keep in mind when you're attaching these is you want to make sure that you have your adhesive completely against the shelf and there's none kind of peeking out at the top or bottom. If you have any exposed adhesive in behind those pieces, it's going to kind of glue to the card when you fold it closed, and it's not going to open properly. So you just want to make sure that you have the adhesive completely underneath the wave right against the shelf area, and then you can start to add in your little characters. So I like to do this a few ways. I like to put adhesive directly on the back of them and just kind of stick them onto the waves like I did with these first two. But I also like to use acetate to be able to raise them up a little bit higher and not have them actually adhered to the waves. So I have some small skinny strips of acetate that I've cut with my paper trimmer, and I'm adding a little piece of score tape to both ends of the acetate. So you can see here I'm kind of just sticking it on there and I'm trimming it off with my scissors. And now I have this strip of acetate that has sticky adhesive on both ends. On the top piece, I'm going to remove the backing and I'm going to attach one of the little fish. So he's completely covering that adhesive. And then I remove the adhesive backing on the bottom and I'm going to attach this to one of the waves. Now I want this guy to look like he's kind of jumping out of the water, so I kind of angled him diagonally. And you can see there that he's not touching a wave at all. It looks like he's kind of floating in the air and looks like he's kind of jumping out of the water. So that is another option. And then the last thing I like to do is adhere them to the back of the wave. So for that plant there, I actually put the adhesive on the front of the plant, and then I adhered it to the wave so it was kind of hidden in behind. So just have fun with it and kind of add your little characters all over until you're happy with your scene. And I did want to quickly mention that when you lie this card completely flat, it will go into an envelope. And if you don't have anything sticking up above the back panel of the card, it will fit into a standard A2 size envelope. Since I have my palm tree kind of sticking up, this one won't fit. It will need a larger envelope. But keep that in mind if you want to be able to mail it in a standard envelope. You can, as long as you keep everything below the top of that back panel. So that is our fun little box card that we quickly and easily created with one piece of cardstock and then had fun decorating with all of our different elements that we added on top. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some ideas. I look forward to seeing what you guys create with this technique, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Thanks so much for watching.